I never imagined that one day I would be sitting in a courtroom because of my own family. I always thought this kind of thing only happened to other people, to those we see in the news or hear about in passing conversations. But when life decides to turn upside down, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It all started in a seemingly trivial way, a small disagreement that grew like a weed inside the house I had lived in for almost 10 years with my dad and my stepmother, Regina. When she arrived, I was 15 and still trying to cope with my parents' divorce. At first, I thought she just wanted to be nice, but over time I realized that everything she did came with a hint of calculation. I would go out to study, and when I came back, something of mine would be missing. First small objects, then notebooks, then even memories she erased with lies told in front of my dad. And he believed her. He always believed her. Over the years, I moved to a small apartment, but I kept in touch with him. Regina never liked that. She said I was using him, that I only came around to ask for money, which wasn't true. She was good at manipulating. One day, I got a call from my dad, his voice cold, saying he was tired of the fights, that he wanted distance. It hurt in a way I can't explain. I spent weeks unable to sleep properly. 2 months later, he had a stroke. I rushed to the hospital, and there was Regina with a closed-off face pretending to be calm. When I tried to get close to him, she said, "I think it's better if you don't go in. He needs peace." That made my blood boil. I pushed past the door anyway. He could barely speak, but he held my hand tightly. We stayed there in silence, and that touch told me more than any words could. 3 days later, he died. The funeral was a nightmare. Regina organized everything and excluded me from the decisions. When I tried to say a few words, she cut me off in front of everyone. "You have no right to do this." People looked at each other, and I just walked away. I knew grief would be hard, but I didn't realize it would come with more surprises. A week later, I got a notice. I was being sued for defamation and disturbing grief. Regina claimed I had verbally attacked her, that I was stalking her, that I wanted my dad's money. I was in shock. I hired a lawyer, Marcos, a friend of my uncle. He listened to everything calmly. "We'll need to prove she's lying." I had nothing but my word. The days leading up to the hearing were long. I went to work, came home, and kept imagining what my dad would think if he saw all this. On the day of the hearing, I arrived early, sweaty hands, racing heart. Regina entered wearing a black dress and an expression of offended innocence. When the judge asked each of us to speak, she started a rehearsed speech, full of tears that seemed calculated. She said I hated her, that I had promised to ruin her life. I could hardly believe it. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and spoke as if holding on to a thread. I said I only wanted to understand why she needed to destroy me even after my dad's death. I told everything, without yelling, without drama, just the raw truth. At one point, the judge asked, "Do you have evidence?" I looked at him and said, "Only what I lived through." It was the first time I saw Regina avert her gaze. Maybe she knew I couldn't prove anything, but also that her lies couldn't sustain everything. The case ended up being dismissed for lack of evidence, and although that didn't erase what happened, it was a relief. After the hearing, I went to the car and cried, not out of anger, but exhaustion. I knew I hadn't won a war, but at least I had survived it. In the following months, I started gathering my dad's things that Regina didn't want. Photos, some old letters, a pen he always used. Sometimes I still dream about him, and in the dream he tells me that time puts everything in its place. Today, when I walk past the courthouse, I feel a strange mix of tightness and calm. That cold room taught me that justice isn't always about who has evidence, but about who can move forward without losing themselves completely. Regina disappeared from my life, and that is enough. It took time, but I learned that silence sometimes is the only possible answer when the truth has already been told.